It starts the way all stories in Pine Ridge do. Quietly. You don't hear about it online, and you definitely don't read it in the papers. It travels on the wind, between those who've seen too much and don't want to remember. There's a phrase locals use when you ask about the ridge. We don't talk about it publicly. And when you press them, they'll just shake their heads and change the subject. But sometimes silence says more than words ever could. Back in 2019, a family camping near Slim Buttes called tribal police just before midnight. The call lasted 47 seconds. No screaming, no panic. Just a man whispering, "It's standing behind the tent." When deputies arrived, they found the tent torn open, the fire still burning, and every personal item left behind. The only tracks around the campsite didn't match any known animal. They were human, barefoot, and heavy enough to sink an inch into hard ground. The report never reached the public log. It was filed under unverified disturbance. That night, local radio scanners picked up something else, distorted, almost like someone talking through static. A voice repeating a single word, "Come back." It matched the missing man's voice exactly. Out here, sound carries strange. The valleys catch it, bend it, throw it back hours later. That's what most people tell themselves when they hear things in the dark. But the people who live here, the ones who've been here for generations, they know better. They say it doesn't stalk for hunger. It waits. It waits until you notice it, until you speak its name. And once you do, it never forgets your voice. This story isn't new. It's older than the fences, older than the towns that tried to tame the land. And yet, every few years the pattern repeats. Someone vanishes. Someone swears they heard their own voice echo from the tree line, and the whole community goes silent again. If you drive through Pine Ridge tonight, the air feels heavier, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest. Lights go out earlier here, not because people are sleeping, but because they've learned it's safer when the night doesn't notice you. There's something living between the hills, something they still won't name. And before this is over, you'll understand why.
Pine Ridge Reservation sits in the far southwest corner of South Dakota, a land that stretches beyond the horizon, where the earth itself seems to remember everything that's ever happened on it. Over 2 million acres of open prairie, badlands, canyons, and wooded ridges. From above, it looks endless, a patchwork of shadow and sun, carved by wind, storms, and memory. The air here is dry, carrying the scent of sagebrush and dust. The sky at dusk turns the land copper, then violet, then black. So black it feels like you're staring into deep water instead of night. There are no city lights, no hum of traffic, just the wind, the insects, and the occasional far-off howl of something you can't always identify. This is the home of the Oglala Lakota Nation, people whose roots run deeper than the soil itself. Every ridge, every creek, every stone has a name, a purpose, and a spirit. Outsiders see wilderness. The Lakota see history and warning. For centuries, stories have been passed down here, not as superstition, but as memory. Tales of watchers that roam the hills, of voices that don't belong to the living, of things that move between worlds when the wind changes direction. The people of Pine Ridge don't separate the natural from the supernatural. To them, both exist in the same breath, and some parts of the land are simply not meant to be disturbed. Ask the older generations, and they'll tell you that certain ridges are avoided after dark. Not because of animals, or crime, or fear, but because those ridges have owners of their own, and they're not human. They'll say, "You don't whistle after sunset. You don't answer when something calls your name. And you never talk about what you see if it looks almost human." To most Americans, Pine Ridge is just another reservation marked on a map. But to those who live here, it's something far more complex. A living reminder that not every wilderness has been conquered. Some places still keep their secrets, and some secrets still keep their silence. And it's in that silence that the stories of the predator begin. Long before the borders of South Dakota were drawn, before fences and highways cut through the plains, the people of Pine Ridge told stories about something that shared the land with them. It was never given a single name. That's the first thing you'll notice when you start asking. The elders won't call it a spirit, and they won't call it a creature. They just say it walks where we don't. Some stories describe it as a tall figure that moves like a man but carries itself wrong. Too still when it should move. Too fast when it shouldn't. Others say it's not a body at all, but a voice that wears different faces, choosing the one that frightens you most. Among the Lakota, there are older words, ones that translate loosely to the one that wears the skin of the missing. It's said to live between dusk and dawn, crossing over when the wind blows east, returning when it shifts west. When the missionaries first arrived in the late 1800s, they dismissed the stories as folklore, but even some of them recorded strange entries in their journals. Livestock vanishing overnight, tracks that began in open fields and ended halfway up rock faces, and the eerie mimicry of human speech heard just beyond their camps. By the 1930s, tribal hunters had their own name for it, the Whisperer on the Ridge. They claimed it could lure a person out by calling their name in the voice of a loved one, always from the tree line, always just far enough that you couldn't quite see who was speaking. And yet, despite all the stories, there are no songs, no dances, no ceremonies that mention it directly. It's as though acknowledging it gives it permission to come closer. That's why older generations teach the young not to talk about it. Not because they want to protect a secret, but because they want to protect their families. To the Lakota, words have power. Speaking a name brings it closer. So when you hear someone say, "We don't talk about it publicly," they mean it literally. Over the years, outsiders have tried to label the phenomenon. Some say it's a version of the wendigo, a spirit of hunger and possession. Others think it's connected to the skinwalker legends from the Southwest. But those who live here insist it's neither. "It's not from our stories," one elder told a local historian. "It's older than that. It doesn't belong to anyone." For them, it's not a myth. It's part of the landscape. An unwelcome neighbor that's always been there, waiting for anyone foolish enough to go looking for it. The hills of Pine Ridge have held these whispers for centuries, passed down like warnings carved into the wind. But the difference now is this. In recent decades, people have started seeing it again. And this time, it's not just stories from the old days. The first official mention of anything unusual on Pine Ridge doesn't come from old folklore or superstition. It comes from a ranger's field log, dated November 14th, 1999. The entry is short, just a few sentences written in fading ink. Heard something large, following at 2:40 a.m. Didn't sound like elk or cat. Heavy. Two-legged.
broke off at the ridge. The ranger who wrote it, his name was Thomas Graywater, never filed a follow-up report. 2 months later, he left the service without notice. When asked about it years later, he simply said, "I stopped hiking alone." That might have stayed a footnote in local records if not for what happened in 2003. A group of teenagers from Kyle decided to camp out near Medicine Root Creek, a place their grandparents always warned them about. They were filming on a handheld camcorder, trying to record what they called a night challenge. Only one of them made it back before sunrise. The footage was later recovered by tribal authorities. Most of it is normal. Kids laughing, building a fire, daring each other to whistle after dark. Then, around midnight, one of them says, "Do you hear that?" What follows isn't clear. It's a low, broken echo, almost human, calling the boy's name from the woods. The voice repeats it, closer each time, until the camera swings violently and cuts out. The tape was never released publicly, but a still image, showing something tall, partially hidden behind a cottonwood, circulated briefly among local officers before being confiscated. One of them described it as not human, but not quite animal either. Too thin, the eyes reflected like metal. Over the next decade, more reports surfaced. Hunters found tracks that shifted shape halfway through. A barefoot human impression followed by deep, elongated prints. Livestock were discovered mutilated in ways inconsistent with predator attacks. No tearing, no bite marks, just absence. And in every report, there's one common detail: mimicry. It's always a familiar voice, a missing brother, a child, a friend calling from the tree line. Sometimes the voice is distant. Other times, it's so close the listener swears they felt the breath on their neck. Tribal police responded to several of these calls but rarely filed official statements. One officer, speaking anonymously to a local paper, admitted, "There are cases we don't type up, because nobody wants to explain what we saw. The silence became its own kind of evidence. No one wanted to name it. But people started moving away from the wooded areas, locking their windows at night, and keeping their children indoors after sundown. In 2007, the pattern broke again, this time with tragedy. 2 wildlife officers were dispatched to investigate missing cattle near White Clay. They followed what they believed were cougar tracks up a rocky incline, but halfway up the ridge, the prints changed. From padded paws to human footprints. Bare in freezing weather. Their radio contact dropped at 10:42 p.m. The next morning, one of the officers was found unconscious near his vehicle. His partner, David Red Elk, was missing. The man who survived refused to speak publicly. In his written statement, only one line stood out. It was calling my name from where he disappeared. No trace of Red Elk was ever found. The file was closed under unresolved wildlife incident. And yet, within Pine Ridge, people knew exactly what they were dealing with. Because these weren't isolated reports. Every few years, another story surfaces. Another search ends too quietly, and the locals go back to their silence. They say the land keeps what it takes, but out here, it's starting to feel like something else decides who gets taken. The morning after the incident, the air in the valley was eerily calm. News of what happened spread in fragments, through truck stop chatter, late-night radio murmurs, and the occasional police scanner transmission that cut off mid-sentence. By sunrise, the entire area was swarming with unmarked vehicles.
Locals described men in dark uniforms without insignia, faces hidden behind mirrored glasses, moving through the forest with metal detectors, Geiger counters, and strange equipment that hummed quietly as they swept the ground. They weren't law enforcement, at least not the kind anyone recognized. And the way they worked, fast, efficient, wordless, made it clear they'd done this before. When reporters tried to approach, the sheriff's office issued a simple statement. An ongoing investigation is being conducted in cooperation with federal authorities. No further details will be released at this time. That line was repeated word for word across every media outlet. No mention of the missing people, no mention of what was found near the ridge, no mention of the footage that, according to a volunteer searcher, had been confiscated minutes after being recovered from a damaged camera. Even the witnesses, those who had seen the lights over the trees or heard the sound like an engine running underwater, were suddenly quiet. Some received visits late at night, routine questioning, they said. Others just stopped talking altogether. And then, almost overnight, the area was declared off-limits due to environmental hazards. Helicopters patrolled the perimeter. Hunting season was canceled without warning. The trails disappeared from official park maps, replaced with thick gray shading marked Restricted Zone 7B. For months, nothing more was said. But every so often, residents claimed to see lights again in that same patch of sky, hovering in absolute silence, flickering once, then fading into the black. And each time someone tried to bring it up, to ask what really happened out there, the same answer came back, calm and rehearsed. There's nothing to worry about. The situation's under control. Only it never felt that way. It's been years since that night, yet I still can't drive past the forest without feeling like someone's watching. The signs are still there, faded now, rusted at the edges, but they mark the same boundaries. No trespassing, federal property. What used to be open wilderness now feels like a grave with an unmarked headstone. People don't talk about it anymore. They can't. The locals have learned to keep quiet, to let the questions rot in silence. Even the families of the missing have stopped asking for updates. Their homes sit dark at the end of long dirt roads, mailboxes overflowing, curtains always drawn. The government sent them checks, compensation for losses incurred, but no answers, no bodies. Sometimes, late at night, I replay everything in my head. The strange pulse that shook the trees, the sudden static in the radio, the way the air itself seemed to bend, like heat on asphalt. I tell myself it was just panic, that I imagined more than what was really there. But then I remember the smell of metal, sharp and electric, that lingered for days after. The officials said nothing unusual was found. They called it a training accident, even though no one ever explained what kind of training requires an entire valley to vanish from public access. And when I pressed harder, when I called the county office, the ranger station, even a few contacts in the press, I stopped getting replies altogether. It's strange how silence can sound louder than any explosion, how the absence of truth can echo longer than the event itself. There are nights I dream about the ridge, the same one where the lights appeared. In the dream, it's not empty. There's movement behind the tree line, shapes shifting, watching. Every time I wake, I swear I hear the faint hum again, that low vibration that rattles the chest more than the ears.
Maybe the government's right. Maybe it's better that people forget. But deep down, I know what I saw, and I know what they're trying to bury. The forest is quiet now, yes, but not because it's safe. It's quiet because something out there doesn't want to be found. And if you ever drive past those restricted signs at night, don't stop. Don't look up. Just keep driving.
They say the truth doesn't stay buried forever. But out here, in Pine Ridge, it's not the ground you have to worry about. It's the people who decide what gets remembered and what disappears quietly into the soil. See, when something can't be explained, it gets labeled, categorized, sealed away. Unidentified animal, restricted wildlife zone, classified. It's how the system protects itself. But those who've lived here long enough know that what's hidden isn't always gone. It's just waiting for the right kind of darkness to return. I've thought about leaving the story behind, moving on like everyone else did. But every time I close my eyes, I see the ridge again, lit up by that impossible glow, the forest trembling like it's breathing. And in that breath, I hear the same unspoken warning that's haunted this place for generations. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. Maybe that's why no one speaks about the Pine Ridge predator anymore. Not because they've forgotten, but because remembering invites it back. Because once you start digging, once you start repeating its name, the woods start listening. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that this forest remembers everything. So if you ever find yourself driving through South Dakota and your GPS suddenly loses signal, if you see the tree line go still, like it's waiting, and you notice that eerie silence where even the wind seems to hold its breath, turn around, because out here, not every mystery needs to be solved. Some are meant to stay unspoken.